Hello, everyone. We're going to, in this episode, we're going to ask the question, does Paul eviscerate all of God's law in all 5 books of Moses in Galatians 3? So all you need to do is read Galatians 3. Maybe you could inch a little bit and look at the first part of Galatians 4, and you've got all you need to know to explain to anyone why Paul is an apostate, and he's actually cursed under Deuteronomy 27, a passage he misquoted, which actually pointed at himself, and he was actually trying to denigrate the law, and he didn't understand what the passage actually said. And when we get to the very end, I'm going to now reveal to you at the very end what was the decision in the Habakkuk Pesher of the assembly, the New Covenant Assembly, led by James the Just, known in this instance, the teacher of righteousness. His name was known as the Just, or Zadik, righteousness. And so that was his role, as we see in the book of Acts. And this is what Eisenman is saying is clearly a reference to our original church's assembly and its meeting and its ruling on the person they called the Spouter of lies. Okay, so hang in there for the end. You're going to find this, everything I'm pointing out, it was eventually judged and condemned. So just pay attention. You'll have a payoff at the end that will be very satisfying, I assure you. So preparation for this teaching today is to look at Professor Harnack, Dr. Adolf Harnack, in his History of Dogma, his famous book of 1889. He's a liberal theologian, so we're not going to expect anything good from him. But what he does tell you sometimes is useful, and he's going to tell us that the Pharisees had a very interesting doctrine about angels, and you'll find out why it's important to know that Paul had this doctrine. We may remind readers, Professor Harnack says, of the assumption that the world was created by angels, not God, that the law was given by angels. The law was given by angels. Do we know somebody who says that? Yes, we're going to see Paul says that. And similar ones which are found in the theology of the Pharisees. So this is where it comes from. These are doctrines of the Pharisees. So anyway, and the Jews were taught by the Pharisees to worship angels. So this is where that comes from. And it explains a lot. So Paul never got away from his Pharisee background. So we're going to start with Galatians 3, verse 10. Does the misreading of Deuteronomy turn the law into an unavoidable curse? Okay, so this is Paul's reading of in Galatians 3:10. This is the NIV. For all who rely on the works of the law are under a curse. And as it is written, cursed is everyone who does not continue to do everything written in the book of the law. Grossly misquoting Deuteronomy 27, verse 26. Okay, so there he's teaching. Paul is teaching if you fail in one law. So if you take on the law and try to do one law and you fail to do it correctly, then you're cursed. The word cursed in the Bible means bad things are going to happen to you, and you can expect that. So you'll get sick, you'll lose your job, you might have a menial job instead of a good job. All kinds of bad things will happen to you. So you'll be cursed. And so he's saying he's going to teach these people, tell the Galatians, and this is his very first epistle. Galatians is his first epistle in the year 47 AD. He's been in the Christian church supposedly for 10 years and invisible, and he's writing this epistle supposedly in 47 AD, and it's his first. And the first thing he's telling people is he doesn't even know how to read the book of Deuteronomy. And so what does Deuteronomy actually say? Cursed is he who does not establish the words of this law to do them. And all the people have said, Amen. Now think about what that's saying. If you do not uphold the words of this law to do them, if you say, well, you don't have to do any of the law, that means you're not upholding the words of the law. Okay, it's not that you had to do every law. You had to affirm, amen, that we will do the law. We will do the best we can, of course. So, but it's not saying any single failure will curse you. No, 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 no. It doesn't say that, Paul, but that's how Paul read it. And he made it sound like a scary, horrible thing. What did I tell you? Scare tactics. Paul was the artist of all times of scare tactics. So he doesn't know how to read the law. He's a as Tobias Singer says, a biblical ignoramus. It truly is true. And our scholars, our brilliant, brilliant Christian churches and schools and theologians, they don't care what it says in Deuteronomy. They'll assume that whatever Paul said it really was, when it really isn't. So this is just par for the course. Don't expect that you can teach anybody to read the law and read it right. They won't read it right. So this is not this is for our education, that we need to know what there's going to be a verdict. You're going to hear it at the end. You're going to listen and see how our church viewed Paul and what they labeled him. They gave him a name. And so our original church. So we're going to see where it's coming from. Now, Paul also was teaching there that basically to do any effort to obey the law, to be right with God, is useless. Basically, you're only going to get cursed if you even try to go down that path. And I just want to show you what God says in the Ten Commandments, and I'm going to show you a Pauline false doctrine quote I got out of Grace Communion International. And so here's what Exodus 20 verse 6 says. So when you sin, what did the Ten Commandments tell you when you were if you were a first century Christian? You would go, oh, it says, God says, I show mercy unto thousands of them who love me and keep my commandments. So I have to repent by turning back and loving God and keeping the commandments again. Okay, I get it. Makes sense. Rational sense too. God's going to be forgiving if I go back and I do what I should have done, and I can go back in his good grace. And that's the meaning of grace, by the way. The word mercy there translates, has said, as the word grace, interchangeably, same meaning. Pauline false doctrine teaches us today that obedience to the law is a path to damnation. Listen very carefully to what Grace Communion International, a major grace center. The law is not a way to earn favor with God. So this whole idea of reading Exodus 26, that's not how you're going to get favor with God. No. In fact, the law functions, it says it functions in the reverse way, since we all fall short of its demands. So it's saying when you try to obey the law, it actually operates the reverse way. Just the attempt to do it will condemn you and curse you, as we just read. This is the curse of Galatians 3. That's you're cursed by even trying. And you think I'm kidding. Wait till we get to what he's talking about with the Sabbath. Just even trying to do the Sabbath is going to curse you, so don't even bother. This epistle, this chapter and a half are the craziest doctrinal statements. If you just sit for a moment and even if you're a Paulinist, just think for a minute, suspend all your belief in Paul, and just try to be a reasonable person who reads it. Can God curse you for trying to follow his law? For trying to keep the Sabbath? Why in the world would he curse you for that? But we're going to see that's exactly what Paul says. Don't even try. Okay, I just want to introduce this clip. Professor Eisenman is being interviewed by these two young men. I don't really know who they are, but he's being asked about, was Jesus's message, would it have been received through Paul by the Jewish people in a favorable way? And he's going to tell you what he perceives. And it involves this passage of Galatians 3:10, where he basically says, and all those who rely upon the works of the law are cursed. And he's going to tell you what Jewish people would think of Paul's views.
Something that I wanted to bring to your attention, there's a group of people who are obviously trying to approach this New Testament text, and they're suggesting that salvation is only for Israel in the New Testament, right? And so, of course, Jesus comes for the lost sheep of Israel, et cetera, et cetera. And they get into Paul, and every time it says Gentile or there's neither Jew nor Greek, they don't mean Greek. They mean diaspora Hellenized Jew. And so do you have anywhere that you would obviously suggest that it is Israel's only coming from Paul, or that it might be something that Paul's really breaking down the door and giving this to even the pagan world? Do you think he's eliminating it?
Sure, he's taking it. His teaching is for the pagan world, and they're the ones who accepted it. And they became the kind of Christianity we're all familiar with now. Most Jews did not accept it, and I don't see how you could say it has anything to do with Judaism or Jews pro-Roman or anti-Roman, because it's very anti-Semitic. And so I don't see, and it's anti-law and things like that. He calls the law a curse at one point. I mean, no Jew would ever say that the law of Moses was a curse. It's just not possible. So as he's willing to talk like that, no Jew would be able to, in good conscience, be part of this. So these people who are saying these things are conjuring it up out of their imaginations, and I can't respond to people who are basically reflecting their own mindsets and imaginary insights.
Thank you for answering that, Luther.
Okay, so, even before we get to Galatians 3:19, which is another problem passage, we already have Paul having alienated every Jewish person who would be reading these passages. So now Galatians 3:19, is this due to hubris, pride, or this is Pharisee doctrine, or is it both? So let's listen to Galatians 3:19. Why then was the law given at all? It was added because of transgressions until the seed to whom the promise referred had come. So you have to know what he's saying here. He's defined earlier in Galatians 3:16, just 3 verses earlier, that Jesus was the promised seed. So when God said, I am going to bless all your seed, Abraham, even though that was a collective noun, meaning multiple ancestors to follow, Paul said, no, it altogether was a single seed because it wasn't in the plural. And he's thinking, just so you know, he's thinking in Greek, the word is in plural, but in Hebrew, it's a word that is both plural and singular, and you can only tell by context. And in context, I was going to give you many seed, and your seed will be more numerous than the stars. So Paul didn't even know how to read the verse, the promise to Abraham of you were going to have many seed and many generations of seed. I mean, even that, he just doesn't seem. I don't think he knows how to read, or his eyesight is really bad, or he's got some mental problem. Because I mean, how can you not know that's not? It's not whether it's pluralized or not. It's Hebrew. And you can't use Greek to define Hebrew. So did you learn that for Gamaliel? So he's just got one misread already of Deuteronomy. He's got the misread of the promise of Genesis of all the seed, and that's in Genesis 13, 17, and 21. I have a whole series on that. That was all the way at the beginning, several months ago. We did that. So he's just the worst Torah teacher there's ever been on earth. He just doesn't seem to know the Torah. And now he's destroying the Torah. We already saw he called it a curse, right? Now he's going to actually end it. He's going to bring it to a stop. So first he says it's temporary here, and when the seed came, it ended. So it's already over by the time you're finished with 3:19a. But now he's going to stab it in the heart with the next verse. Half of the verse is Galatians 3:19b. I call it B. The law was given through angels and entrusted to a mediator, Moses. So if you read Exodus 20, where the Ten Commandments is given, you would hear Yahweh speaking, and you would see references to the people were scared to death when he was speaking to them, and Moses was listening, and the people could hear it. And they're like, there's all these references that Yahweh speaking, but no, he's saying it was given through angels, and that is a doctrine of the Pharisees. We saw at the very beginning with Harnack. They believe the law was given through angels, and that's why I wanted you to see that. So this is not a doctrine that's in the Bible. It's a doctrine from the polluted minds of the Pharisees. And Paul is what? He's reflecting the mentality of people who Jesus called, vipers. People who were just preying on people's souls, didn't care about teaching them the principles from the law of mercy, the principles of right and wrong, which Jesus called justice, or the principle of pistis, which was either faith or faithfulness. So he is now destroyed and eviscerated the law in just each point in one sentence. Each point, actually there's 2 sentences, but it's one verse. In one verse, just 2 points, destroys all the law. All 5 books of Torah. If it's not given by the angels, if it's given by angels, it's not given by God. It excludes God, and he means that, and he's going to prove it when he gets to the issue of whether they should obey Sabbath. And wait till you hear this part of it. Okay, but since he mentioned that the law was given by angels, I decided let's go back and look at something he says earlier in Galatians, just to see where he puts himself. Is he more important than angels? Because now he said the law was given in angels. So is Paul Paul of Tarsus, is he even at a higher level than angels, so he can actually be the one who can say that the law is gone or not? Because now he's denigrated. It's not given by Yahweh, so he's failing. Does he feel he has enough authority in whatever authority he has to wipe out the law? Okay. Galatians 1:18, is Paul's gospel higher than God's word at Sinai, than even Jesus' words? That's an open question. Galatians 1:18, NIV, but even if we or an angel from heaven should preach a gospel other than the one we preach to you, let them be under God's curse. Now, by the way, do you recognize scare tactics? When God has a curse, it means bad things will happen to you. That's what it means. But he's almost wishing evil on people who would come with a different gospel, and he would say that his words are even higher than an angel from heaven. So if angel Gabriel usually comes with messages and to Daniel and other things. So he's saying if Daniel came right now to the people in the room, and it's Daniel, not Daniel, Gabriel. Gabriel's in the room, and all the people are there, and Paul's right there. He's saying, if Angel Gabriel said, I am telling you, Yahweh says you must obey Sabbath, and Paul says no, he's going to say it's he's definitely going to curse the people for wanting to do Sabbath, and we haven't gotten there yet. And so Paul's saying, if that Angel Gabriel was standing right here, right now, you would have to follow me. I'm more important than an angel. Can we agree? He is more important than an angel of heaven. Okay. And you really have to say he's more important than Yahweh, because he's wiped out Yahweh as the author of the 5 books of Moses. So he's gotten rid of a large part of the Bible. People say people try to say the people who think Paul should be removed, the 13 epistles of Paul should be removed from the inspired section of Scripture. They claim we are the guys who want to destroy the integrity of Scripture. Look at your boy. Paul isn't even claiming he's quoting Yahweh at any time, nor is he quoting Jesus at any time in any of his epistles. You want to protect him, but God Yahweh, who is verbally talking throughout the Torah, throughout the 5 books of Moses, Paul just threw it away with one verse. It was given by angels. Maybe we should just do that too and just say, you know what? Paul is speaking by an angel. He's not speaking by God. And so, you know what? I'm just going to claim I'm Bob Jones. No, I don't want to say that. I'm Bob Schlabol. I'm a Schlabol. That's a Jewish Yiddish term I learned in my neighborhood in the Bronx. And, hey, he's the Schlabol. I'm Bob Schlabol. I'm going to say, you know what? All of Paul's epistles are given by an angel, and I'm more important than Paul, because he believes in angels, and I'm going to tell you, just ignore Paul. Let's pull him out of the Bible. That's the level of quality that Paul is exercising here. He has absolutely no authority whatsoever to do what he's doing. He does not have authority equal to even an angel, let alone to Yahweh, to destroy the 5 books of Moses. But that's what he's done. That's what he has done. And how Christian ministers can go to school, go to theology school, and not realize this fits within what principles of the law? It's called 2 things: apostasy and the curse of Deuteronomy 27, which is if you do not uphold the law, you are cursed. So he's going to be guilty of both things. So let's go and look at the next slide where we'll get into that. So we'll begin with the apostasy rule. A lot of people don't know what it is. So the apostasy rule cancels Paul's fear tactics. So what did I tell you is a way of fighting, want to be anti-Paul? Well, Paul relies on scare tactics to keep the Galatians in line. So they will never challenge Paul, because he's saying you're cursed if you try to do these things. I'm afraid for you that I've wasted all my time on you, blah, 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 blah. If an angel of heaven came, he's not more important than me. He's basically made himself a demigod. I mean, he has just really pushed all the buttons to claim you can't even defy me. I'm so important. But apostasy is a very clear rule, and the Galatians should have been very calm, and I hope they did. We don't know. And all they had to do is calmly read to Paul, say, Paul, we've read in the law that you are throwing away, that you claim was given by angels. It actually tells us something. Deuteronomy 13:10 says, Yahweh commands we must reject as a false prophet someone who has prophecy that even comes to pass. So you told us that, all the things that you believe, you've prophesied that came to pass. But God says in this passage that that's not important. And it says, even if he has signs and wonders, and Paul, you've told us you've done lots of signs and wonders, and a lot of us here have experienced it, but God in this passage says it doesn't matter. He says that's irrelevant if the next condition's met, Paul. And Paul would say, well, what do you mean? What's the next condition? I don't remember reading. What's the law of apostasy? Oh, what are you getting? You foolish Galatians, you're getting into the law. Wait a minute, Paul, you've got to hear this last part. You want to know what he says? He says, but if you, Paul, try to seduce us from and turn away from obeying the law, you know what he says? Paul, you don't want to know what he says. He says we're supposed to kill you. We're supposed to take you out and stone you. You're committing a crime against God. That's where this should have ended. We're going to see how our church handles the very same issue. So anyway, that's the rule of apostasy. We have nothing to be afraid about, nothing to even be ashamed about or afraid about, saying this person does not belong in Scripture, because at the time he'd said all these things, he was under a law that would have required his execution, besides the removal of his epistles, and non-consideration, because they're not in the Bible at this time. They're not even known. I mean, in Acts, we can all agree. Luke has no clue that Paul teaches any of this stuff. He has Paul saying and swearing under oath in multiple court appearances, I believe in all things in the law and the prophets. That's a ludicrous position when this is his first epistle. He's destroyed the law and the prophets, or he's destroyed the law, which, if you don't have the law, where do you get the prophets from? They're kind of contingent on the law. All right, next I think we're going to be looking at the curse command. We're going to look at this next thing. This is Galatians 4:9-11. Okay, and so this is just another example. We need to review one more set of verses to examine his quality or qualifications, his apostasy, whether he's cursed by God for his violating Deuteronomy 27 himself. And do we find again in this passage even more clearly that he believes angels and God, Yahweh, are below himself. And he's superior to everybody. And here's what he says. And now having known God, and rather being known by God, how turn you again unto the weak and poor elements, to which anew you desire to be in servitude? Others translated as bondage, which I think is more correct. This is KJV, by the way. 10, days you observe. So he's talking really about Sabbath days. You want to observe Sabbath, and they're doing it. They're doing it regularly, is what it means. Days you are observing, and months and times and years. So they're observing the calendars, and they're observing the holidays, and so on. And he says, now he's going to use scare tactics. I'm afraid of you, lest in vain I did labor towards you. This is Galatians chapter 4, verses 9-11. So he's saying here that obeying Sabbath is bondage, and by doing this, they're subject now to the weak and beggarly elements. And I'm going to show you in the next slide that elements in both, it's in Greek thought, but it's definitely in Hebrew thought, that angels are elements, just an interchangeable term. And he's saying that by seeking to obey the law, the Ten Commandments includes a command about Sabbath, you are seeking to be in bondage to weak and beggarly elements. So he's now not only insulted the law by denigrating it from God, Yahweh, down to angels, now he's denigrating and insulting the angels who are administering that as being weak and beggarly, and basically holding you down in slavery. So these angels are not your friends, they're really your enemy. So boy, we've gone from, it being angels who gave the law, which didn't seem so bad. Now they're weak and beggarly, and on top of it, they don't have a good intention. They wish to keep us as slaves. Wow. This is really shocking, ladies and gentlemen. I just have to pause here. I would love to see how a theological class handles any of this. Do they tell anybody? Do they actually do any expositions of this stuff? Because I don't know how I go through theological school and come out and believing Paul's valid, but they do somehow. Somehow they're produced. Anyway, here on the right side, we see Vincent Word Studies, and he's going to explain what did he mean by the weak and beggarly elements. And he's going to say it's the angels. So I just have to read this to you so you can lock it in. The elements of the world are the personal elemental spirits. This seems to be the preferable explanation, both here and in Colossians 2, verse 8. According to Jewish ideas, all things had their special angels. In the book of Jubilees, chapter 2, appear the angel of the presence, compare Isaiah 63, verse 9, the angel of adoration, the spirits of the wind, the clouds, darkness, hail, frost, thunder, and lightning, winter and spring, cold and heat. Okay, so we got that locked in. We got it. They're angels, but they're weak and beggarly now. So they went from just angels, now they're weak and beggarly, seeking to hold us in bondage and slavery, servitude. And by the way, if you ever want to read Vincent, Vincent's very good because he's not just a commentator who's just using some common sense. He actually knows Greek and he knows Hebrew, so he's able to give you very high level quality commentary. He was around the turn of the century, early 1900s. But he has a couple more things here that wasn't in that. So this is the same thing, but it had more in it. So maybe someone's amending him or he amended it later in time. So when we get over here, he says, in the book of Enoch, 82, I think it's verses 10 to 14, appear the angels of the stars who keep watch that the stars may appear at the appointed time and who are punished if the stars do not appear. So again, he's just saying there's angels that have all these roles in the Bible or in extra biblical works. Jubilees is extra biblical. Enoch is extra biblical at this time. But that's what elemental spirits mean, is what he's saying. So the weak and beggarly elements, that's who's giving us the law and trying to obey the the days, meaning the Sabbath day, or any of the other things of the calendar, are just submitting to those who are weak and beggarly and will lead you to slavery and bondage. Why do you want to do that? Okay, we only have 4 more slides, so just hang in there. So he's now eviscerated all 5 books of Moses with 2 legal results. He's proven he's an apostate under Deuteronomy 13:1-10. We've already quoted that to you. He's proven he's cursed for not upholding the law. That's Deuteronomy 27:26, which he misread and thought it meant any violation made you cursed. So if you were doing this objectively and unemotionally, like we were in a court of law, that these would be the 2 findings you have to come up with. I just want to show you what the opening statement and the closing statement would be for a lawyer who would be addressing this. 1, Paul is saying the observance of days such as the Sabbath and other holidays from Galatians 1-3 is the topic of what he's concerned about the Galatians obeying and following. And in his answer to their wanting to follow the law, and this is in the 10 Commandments, particularly Sabbath is, Paul says that the law was temporary until the seed, meaning Jesus, arrived. Jesus has arrived, therefore he's saying it's gone. He offers no proof that the law has expired. He's just asserting this, so it's self-serving. We have no claim that he's a prophet, that he doesn't, and if he is a prophet, he's supposed to quote Yahweh. That's in Jeremiah 35. Everybody other than Moses and Jesus have to quote Yahweh or they can't be taken for be valid. Okay, so Paul doesn't quote any prophet and he doesn't quote Yahweh, so he has no validity. Paul speaks against the Sabbath meetings, contrary to Acts 15:20-20, verses 20-21, where the 12 apostles agreed that with the 4 rules given, they had one rule against fornication and 3 rules on not eating certain foods. And it then said that the Gentiles would continue growing in knowledge of the law by weekly attendance at Sabbath meetings. And so the verse, if you look on the left side, I highlighted in yellow at the bottom left, and it said, verse 21, for Moses. So this is James telling here's the message we're going to relay to the Gentiles. And we'll tell them to do the 3 food laws and keep against fornication. And then verse 21, for Moses of old time has in every city them that preach him, being read in the synagogues every Sabbath day. So he's clearly indicating we don't need to load them up with a bunch of rules right now. They'll learn it over time as they go to Sabbath each Shabbat. And if you look in the book of Acts, there were several meetings of even just one was a Gentile-only congregation that was meeting on Shabbat. Then point 4, Paul says the law was given by angels to Moses as a mediator and not by Moses, not by Yahweh. That's in Galatians 3:19. This is a Pharisee doctrine we proved, and there's no authority for the Pharisee doctrine. There's no biblical principle for it, so it's a completely self-serving apostate position that basically eviscerated the 5 books of Moses and rendered them null and void. If these poor Gentiles who are listening don't have any common sense to realize this is not a true person, you have to reject him. And we're hoping that they will listen. So I'm pretending I'm like the prosecutor in that era. That would be what I'd say. I hope we can get this message over to these people to save them from the clutches of this person. The next point is Paul says you are cursed, this top left, if you violate a single command, purportedly quoting Deuteronomy 27:26. He's misleading the Gentiles by exaggerating it. It does not say there's a curse for violating a single command. However, it says one only is cursed if one does not uphold the law to be obeyed, which in fact is what Paul is doing. So he is subject to this, and bad things will happen to him, and we should remind the Gentiles, look at Paul's own letters. He claims that his Jesus subjected him to an angel of Satan to torment him, to keep him humble. So his problem sin was lack of humility, according to himself, according to his Jesus even, and he apparently recognized that. He prayed multiple times to have the angel of Satan taken away and remove the torment, but his Jesus wouldn't do that. Now, if I would have to say, as the prosecutor here, is our Jesus, of course, would have released him from an angel saying, our Jesus doesn't use demons as his aides or assistants, so he must not even know the true Jesus. So I would have interjected that in the closing statements here, just to be clear. The next point, Paul says his gospel is higher than an angel from heaven if it had a gospel. Thus, Paul is saying he's higher than a higher level of authority than even who gave the law to Moses. Moses was given the law by angels. Remember, he said that. So Paul is claiming he has even a higher authority than the source of Moses' authority. And ergo, this is what Paul is claiming is his authority under Galatians 1:18. And then I, as prosecutor, would say he absolutely has no authority to do this. Again, he's not proven who has given him this authority. He doesn't have any proof other than his self-serving claims about having experiences in the third heaven with a party that he says, I can't even tell you what they said. He's told us in 2 Corinthians 12 he cannot communicate anything that was told to him in the third heaven. It's illicit for him to say it. It's illegal for him to say it. And he says it's also unspeakable. So everything prevents him from telling us anything. Therefore, we can't take anything he says as from a true verifiable source. So we have to just conclude that he's saying things without any authority. And then finally, he's claiming the submission to the Sabbath command, if violated, will cause a curse instead of a blessing. And we need to send a message, and I'm going to step out of the prosecutor 2,000 years ago and talk to everybody here. So we need to spread the message that Gentiles should keep Sabbath. It really only requires a rest. It's a good idea to have a convocation that day. It's not clear because 6 of the 7 times it doesn't say anything about a convocation. One time it does. So I would just say that doesn't seem to be a mandatory thing, or otherwise why isn't it at all 7 references? But you can make an argument that it's mandatory to have a convocation. But it doesn't matter. Make some sort of convocation somehow where you read the word, and you can maybe even, some people have said you could even have a convocation with yourself. So and God, in one meeting. So whatever you do, just do, as the Didache said, is do the best you can. Try to do something on Shabbat other than just not working. Try to spend time with God in prayer and reading the Word of God. Okay, so we got a couple more things to show you. Hold on. All right, and if I were a prosecutor, what I would do is I would also bring in Bart Ehrman to testify. And I just think it's interesting. He's not even a Christian, and he sees something's wrong here. He's not going to offer a judgment. He's just going to tell you there's something wrong in Denmark. In his book, Bart Ehrman, 2006, Peter, Paul, and Mary Magdalene, the followers of Jesus in history and legend, he says this, and here's where one of the most difficult aspects of Paul's thought comes into play. If having the Spirit enables one to do what the law commands, so he's quoted Paul saying, the benefit of having the Holy Spirit instead of worrying about all these technical things is you can then obey the law's commands. So it's kind of, what does that mean? Which is obviously a good thing, Bart says. Then you would think that Paul would go on to insist that people do just that, keep all the laws of Scripture. These laws include things such as being circumcised if you are male, and I put that in gray because that's true for Gentiles only if they want to go to Passover. So let's not exaggerate what Gentiles have to do. Or in those days, there was a temple. If you wanted to go to the temple, you had to be circumcised. So that's not a universal command, even in the law. Then keeping kosher food laws. I would say you should keep them even if it doesn't say Gentiles because they're good. The word clean, unclean means in Hebrew toxic or non-toxic. It's sort of implying these are unhealthy. So I would suggest even if you don't accept that they're applicable directly to you, it's a good idea to keep them because you're eating toxic foods if you don't eat kosher food. Anyway, observe the Sabbath, which is definitely on all people in community with the Gentiles and Israelites who are in community together. Celebrating certain special holidays, some of those do apply. I think it's the Day of Atonement is a universal command. And then he has one in there, offering sacrifices for sin, and I blocked that out because that's no longer applicable. And so on. Yet Paul is absolutely clear that he thinks that non-Jews are not to do these things once they believe in Christ. In fact, in his most vitriolic letter, the one to the Galatians, he lays a curse on anyone who thinks that Gentiles who have come to believe in Jesus should engage in such practices. Basically, being circumcised, eating kosher foods, observing Sabbath, whatever, holidays. You're cursed. Right? You saw that, and he cites the verses. We've looked at most of them. How can Paul have it both ways, thinking that the law should be kept and is able to be kept by those who have God's Spirit, and thinking that the law must not be kept? So, people will defend Paul and cite to you the verses where he says, hey, by living in the Spirit, you can keep the law. And then he turns around, and those people who try to do that are then cursed and told not to do that. So this is the problem of Paul. Yes, it's called the Pauline paradox by Group 119 Ministries. But I'm sorry, 119 Ministries, just saying you recognize it as the paradox and saying you want to accept the part of Paul that is law obedient doesn't really help you because you can't undo the harm of somebody saying all 5 books of Moses were given by angels. You can't undo the consequence of somebody saying that the law is a curse. And he takes away what it really says is the failure to uphold the law as something to follow is subjects you to a curse, not a single violation. So anyway, I admire people who try to do that, but it's not going to work because it's not true. That's really it. It's not truthful. You're trying your very best, and I know you're doing the best you can to try to get people to not have to reject Paul in order to follow reasonable legal requirements that they should be following, particularly Sabbath. Very admirable, but you can't live a lie. You can't keep defending something that's indefensible, and that's where we're going to now turn to our actual proof from our original church, what they would do, because 119 Ministries, listened to the bravery and the adamancy of our founding fathers of our ministry, of our church, original church. This is their approach. Okay, so here is in essence this is from the Habakkuk. This is from the Dead Sea Scrolls, the Habakkuk commentary, or the Pesher Habakkuk, and this is what Eisenman concluded is a reference to a conflict between the teacher of righteousness, or the righteous teacher, and he interprets that to be James the Just, whose name was the Just, or the Zadik, righteous one. And the conflict was between him and the spouter of lies. And this is a point in time within the community that the Messiah had come. He had been killed by the priests at Jerusalem, and he will return. And this is how they dealt with this person. They didn't try to find excuses or see those things that he says, that sometimes sound like he's endorsing the law. They just called him what he really was. They had a name for him. Those who were unfaithful, together with the liar, that's his first name. He's going to have more than just that. Who did not listen to the word received by the righteous teacher, that is James the Just, according to Eisenman, the brother of Jesus, from the mouth of God, who were silent at the time of the chastisement of the righteous teacher, the Zadik, meaning James, and did not aid him against the liar. I'm going to pause there. So there's something that's happened at event where this liar comes into the congregation and attacks verbally James the Just and chastises him like he did, like Paul says he did, and apparently he really did do to Peter, and said, "You're a hypocrite, blah, 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 blah." So what's happening is some people within their own group have been drawn away to be unfaithful towards the righteous teacher, the Zadik, who's running things after the Messiah came, got killed by the high priest, but he will return. And they were silent. And then here's the next part, which is the next part we're going to read is, they did not aid him against the liar who rejected the law in the midst of the assembly. So they don't have any illusions that, if he says by the Spirit we can walk according to the law. No, we can read and hear what he says. The law is given by angels. He's eviscerated it, having any foundation as coming from the Lord of the universe, Yahweh. He rejects the law in the midst of the assembly, and these people were unfaithful in the new covenant. That's what this is. See, we're, Bart Ehrman is saying, not Bart Ehrman, Eisenman is saying there's a lot of just in this one, two paragraphs, you're going to see all the references that are, this is our early Ebion community, the Ebionites, the poor. They called themselves the poor. They were unfaithful in the new covenant in that they have not believed in the covenant of God. So covenant means you've got obligations. God doesn't just have an obligation to you. And that's what they called it. They called this a new covenant. It wasn't the new unilateral, we get everything for nothing promise, which is what he had eviscerated. Even the new covenant was no longer even a bilateral agreement with bilateral obligations. This was a single promise going one way, only in our favor, for nothing more than just saying, I believe, I believe, I believe. And so even as they're defending the honor of James the Just here, they're pointing out all the flaws of this person and things that he doesn't understand and misunderstands. And he has profaned his holy name. He's profaned Yahweh's name. So there's something that happened that was decisive. So I think if you look at Galatians, he's profaning God's name by saying all these evil things, and it's slavery, and even if an angel of heaven came, you would have to disregard an angel of heaven, Gabriel. Gabriel compared to Paul? Who is Paul compared to the angel Gabriel? It's just unbelievable that people can just read the tripe of Paul and take it as the word of God. My goodness, my friend, how dumb do people have to be to not recognize an apostate liar? And that's what our church wasn't afraid. They called him out. They called him what he actually was. And here's the word, the moniker that will stick around Paul's neck for eternity. He is the spouter of lies. That's the next line. He is the spouter of lies. And now it's going to even get worse. Who leads many astray in order to build his city of vanity on blood and erect an assembly upon lying. For the sake of his glory. This person is seeking his own glory. Tiring out many with a worthless service. He keeps people busy. He makes them work hard at serving him. Paul is getting all these people to do all this stuff for him. And the assembly, the Ebion, are saying he's tiring them out with a worthless service. They're doing things that don't matter. And instructing them in works of lying instead of good works. He's going to teach them how to be hypocrites and pretend to be what you aren't, and basically mislead everybody. And to what end? Their works will be so that their works will be of emptiness, and they will be brought to the same judgment of fire with which they insulted and vilified the elect of God. Now, judgments of fire means hell. So they're saying to the leadership is telling all the people there that all the people that supported the liar, who came to his defense, are going to suffer the same judgment of hell with which they insulted. So they jointly insulted the teacher of righteousness, meaning James the Just. They will go through the same judgment of fire of hell, which they insulted and vilified the elect of God. And maybe he means their elect of God could be maybe the whole community. So, I mean, our church did not pull punches and did not try to find ways to say, well, can we tolerate this person? Can we find anything good that he says? I mean, the nature of a liar is some things they're going to say are true because they're trying to deceive you. And that's what they were not tolerating. This is the person will never break the door of their congregation ever again. He's a liar. He's led people astray. He's leading people to worthless service. He's a spouter of lies. He's teaching works of lying. the very thing that 119 Ministries, you are allowing yourself to be deceived. And if you allow yourself to be deceived, then you're going to be deceiving others, and you don't mean to do that. I know that. So listen to our original church. This is the correct approach. Call him out for what he is. Do not pussyfoot around it. Just get it over with. It's a Band-Aid. You got to rip it off. Just get rid of him. Everybody, we've got to move on, and we've got to help our fellow brothers and sisters. We don't want them to go through the judgment of fire. By supporting Paul, they are in essence insulting God, because you are going along with somebody who says all these things. You are approving of someone who said the law was given by angels. You're acknowledging him and giving him honor when he does not deserve it. He's the spouter of lies. He'll always be known as that. All right. Hope everybody that you found this useful, educating, and take care. God bless. Ciao.